Like during the 1991 Gulf War and the war in Kosovo, depleted uranium rounds were used again by the U.S. military, this time including the center of Baghdad. They lie around for anyone to see and touch. The Geiger counter will give a reading of between 5 and 15 pulses per minute in a typical environment. This depleted uranium round will trigger 10,000 pulses in about 40 seconds. This type of ammunition is radioactive because it is made of nuclear waste referred to as uranium-238 or depleted uranium. This material is left over from the processing of uranium-234 used for atomic bombs and uranium-235 used in nuclear power plants. Long considered toxic garbage, it found an extremely controversial application in the making of cheap, high-perforation shells. Uranium-238 remains radioactive for 4.5 billion years, and its toxicity reveals itself as soon as particles are inhaled or ingested. Cancer and birth defects are the most common side effects.
The United States military forces used 320 tons of depleted uranium in the first Gulf War in 1991. The difference between the first Gulf War and the second Gulf War is very significant, and that is that in the second war, we have seen a lot more depleted uranium use in populated areas, in urban centers. American planes, A-10 Warthog planes that used DU rounds, the 30-millimeter DU rounds, fired at targets in cities.
These particular rounds were found inside the compound of one of Saddam Hussein's palaces in Baghdad. This compound is now guarded by American soldiers who are totally unaware of the contamination.
Struggling to breathe at just a few days old, this was how we met baby Muhammad, born on the first full day of Israel's assault. 1 year later, we found Muhammad still in hospital. He has cerebral palsy. Doctors say his long traumatic birth amidst the bombing caused brain damage and other complications. His mother, Safat, gave birth in a makeshift clinic, and Muhammad was then taken to hospital. The first time Safat held her only child was the day of the ceasefire.
I was happy when I saw him, but at the same time I felt sad. I wanted to breastfeed him, but he was breathing through a tube in his nose. He wasn't even crying. I just wanted to hear him cry.
Other parents can take their kids out to play or take them to the fun fair. We take our child to the hospital.
Safat had regular scans and ultrasounds during pregnancy. There were no signs of defects. She waited 6 years to have a child, but the day he came into this world, Israel's bombs determined his future.
We've seen these cases a lot more since the war. Because of the difficult and tense conditions at birth, Muhammad came out blue. He lacked oxygen, which led to his brain damage.
A legacy of Israel's assault that hasn't only affected Muhammad and his parents.
According to Palestinian medical sources, Israel's use of toxic weapons and ammunition also poisoned the fetuses of many women who were pregnant during the war. A study by Gaza's main hospital into the months of July, August and September just after the war compared to the same time a year earlier revealed a 50% increase in the number of babies born with birth defects.
Leading Gazan pediatricians backed up this figure and say more research into the types of ammunition used during the war is needed.
It's very important to identify these materials, and we have really to know their toxicity because we are afraid that they might get access to the bodies of people and might transmit to different generations, and this by itself is a disaster.
Over 300 children were killed in Israel's war. Many others were injured and will never be cured. a generation bearing the permanent scars of a war they won't even remember. Shireen Tadros, Al Jazeera, Gaza.